You know, every now and then, a scientific paper comes along that's about so much more than just data. It's about hope, real life-changing hope. Today, we're diving into a groundbreaking study on healing childhood trauma right in the middle of a conflict zone. And honestly, the results are just incredible.
To really get why this study is such a big deal, we have to start with this number, 468 million. That is how many children, right now, are living in areas torn apart by armed conflict. It's a number so big, it's hard to wrap your head around. But for every single one of those kids, it's not a statistic. It's their life.
This quote just cuts right to the heart of it, doesn't it? It's not just about bad memories. It's about the loss of being a kid. This is where things like post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD come in. It can literally change how a child's brain is wired, making it tough to learn, to make friends, to just feel safe in the world. So, this study takes us to a specific place, the Central African Republic. It's a country dealing with a hidden emergency. Can you believe nearly half of all households there have a child who's showing symptoms of a mental disorder? So that begs the question, right? Where do you even begin to help?
And that question leads us straight to one of the biggest problems in humanitarian aid, the treatment gap. You've got this enormous, overwhelming need for mental health support, but almost no trained professionals on the ground. The country's only psychiatric hospital is in the capital, so for most people, help is completely out of reach.
So what do you do? Well, researchers and aid workers turned to this absolutely brilliant idea called task shifting. Instead of waiting for specialists who just aren't there, they trained local community members, people who are already teachers, nurses, or social workers, to deliver these proven therapies themselves. It's about empowering the community to heal itself.
So the researchers wanted to make sure these newly trained helpers had the best possible tools. They set up a study to put two different, really powerful therapies head-to-head. They wanted to see which one would work best in this incredibly tough environment.
So on one side, you have a therapy that's all about sharing your story out loud in a group. On the other, one that's focused on the brain quietly reprocessing things inside. Think of it like this. One is about rewriting your story with friends, and the other is about neatly refiling a scary memory in your own mind. Two different paths, but both aiming for the exact same thing, healing.
The first approach, the ACF/Kono protocol, is all about the power of narrative. Kids get together in a group, and a facilitator gently helps them share their stories, what they're afraid of, what happened to them, and what they hope for. The magic here really comes from the group, from saying the things you thought you could never say and seeing that you're not alone.
Now, the second method, G-TEP, is different. It's based on a therapy called EMDR. The kids are still in a group setting for support, but the actual work is done individually and internally. They use things like drawing and worksheets to help their brains reprocess traumatic memories without ever having to say the details out loud. It taps into the brain's own natural ability to heal.
Okay, so you've got two powerful therapies and a team of amazing local paraprofessionals ready to go. Now comes the really hard part. How do you run a proper, rigorous scientific study in an active conflict zone? I mean, think about the challenges. Security is always changing, families are constantly on the move. It's a huge undertaking.
But they did it. Here's how. First, they found over 600 kids who were showing major signs of trauma. They measured those symptoms using a standard scientific scale. Then, they randomly put each child into one of the two therapy groups. After 5 sessions, they measured everyone's trauma scores all over again to see what changed. Simple, clear, and scientific.
Now this number is the key to everything, 17. The researchers used a scale where any score above 17 means a child is at high risk for PTSD. Before any therapy started, the average score for these kids was almost 28, way into the clinical danger zone.
All right, so after 5 sessions delivered by local community members in one of the toughest places on Earth, what happened? Did one therapy just blow the other out of the water? Well, the results are powerful and in a way just beautifully surprising. Let's look at the first group, the narrative therapy. Their average trauma score, it plummeted. It went from almost 28 all the way down to under 11. That is a massive drop, taking them from that high-risk category to well below the clinical line. Sharing their stories clearly had a profound healing effect.
So, what about the G-TEP group, the one that focused on internal brain work? Look at this. The result is almost exactly the same. Their average score also dropped from around 28 to just over 10. It's another incredible success.
Two totally different methods, both delivered by locals, and both produce these huge, life-changing results.
So, which therapy won? The answer is neither. And that, believe it or not, is the best possible outcome. A tie is a huge win for humanitarian mental health. Why? Because it means aid workers don't just have one tool for this. They have two. They have options. They have a whole toolkit they can adapt to whatever situation they're in.
But when the researchers looked a little closer at the data, they found some really fascinating details. It seems the narrative, group sharing therapy, worked just a little bit better for girls, and for the younger kids, those under 12. And the more individual, internal therapy, that seemed to be a slightly better fit for boys and the older kids. That's amazing information that can help teams customize their approach in the future.
I mean, this is all just fantastic news, but the biggest question of all was still out there. The healing was obviously real, but would it last? Especially for kids who are still living in such a tough, unstable environment.
To find out, the research team did something incredibly difficult and frankly dangerous. They went back. 5 months after the therapy was over, they managed to track down 185 of the original children to see how they were really doing long-term.
And the results? They're just breathtaking. The healing didn't just last, the kids actually continued to get better. Their trauma scores, which had already dropped so much, kept on falling months later. Both groups ended up with an average score around 7.5. That's less than half the clinical threshold. This proves that the therapies didn't just put a Band-Aid on the problem. They actually started a real, lasting healing process.
So why are we spending all this time on one single study from the Central African Republic? What makes this so important for the rest of us, for the whole world?
Because this isn't just a story about 661 kids. This is a proof of concept. It proves that we have real evidence-based solutions that can be scaled up to treat childhood trauma. It proves that training and empowering local people is the key to solving the global shortage of mental health care. And maybe most importantly, it proves that healing is possible, even in the hardest circumstances you can imagine. This study is a blueprint. It's a roadmap of hope for millions.
And that leaves us with one last, really powerful question to think about. If this kind of deep healing, backed up by hard science, can happen for kids in the middle of a war zone, where else can we bring this hope? What could this mean for kids not just in crisis areas, but in our own communities, in our schools, everywhere?